Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome back. Today, I have a special guest, and I feel so honored to have him here. We have here Graham Wallace from Continued Sound, and he released just a couple of weeks ago a fantastic compilation, which I can't praise enough. It's The Soul of New Jersey. So, Graham, thanks for joining. And I think before we get into the record, may you introduce yourself for those who don't know you yet.
All right. Yeah, my name is Graham Wallace. I'm originally from New Jersey, surprisingly enough. And yeah, I'm just a record collector, DJ. And over the past year, I've been starting up my record label called Continued Sound. And yeah, it's been a whirlwind, but happy to have my first release out into the world.
So how can I imagine this? So you're DJing, you know all the cool singles from back in the day. My personal favorite is Storm.
Oh yeah.
They only released one single. So you have these singles and then you come up, well, it would be great if other people could have this as a compilation because some of these singles are very rare. So how did this happen, this whole project?
I think it was born out of my just inherent, and I'm sure you share this desire to find new music and just sort of digging in the crates, as they say. And when it came time I knew I wanted to start a reissue label. And when it came time to put out something, I didn't know where to begin. And I thought, why not begin in my home state where I'm from? And the fact that there isn't a lot of attention paid to New Jersey as much because we're so close to New York. So many bands just get associated with New York, and New Jersey just has so many acts and musicians, Whitney Houston, Kool and the Gang, just so much soul that comes out of New Jersey specifically, that I wanted to shine a light on that. And, you know, coming from just an individual trying to start their own record company with little to no money, I had to really find some rare stuff to see what I could afford licensing wise. And it started with, you know, going on the internet and going through my own collection, because I had a few of these singles, but just trying to get a collection of rare New Jersey stuff that had not been released widely. And, you know, like you said, groups like Storm or Pride just have little to no releases beyond just a 45 or something. So felt like that was a good place to start. And then it just became investigative journalism or something to track down guys like Paul Kaiser and George Kerr. And I was aware of them, but to get a hold of them was a whole nother story. And, you know, that was the past year was just a very fun, you know, I felt like I was doing a documentary or doing a journalism piece to try to get these people and make relationships and go on from there. So I was so happy that I got to pay homage to my home state.
So that's great. So you had now a selection for the compilation, and then, well, I don't think that there were master tapes available. So I think you made needle drops.
Yeah, I collected all of the vinyls from different ways, Discogs and things like that. And then this is a great story. So I had the vinyls. I knew I had to make vinyl transfers, but a lot of the vinyls that I had were not of good quality. Some of them were pretty poppy and scratchy. I tried to get the best ones I could, but some are just so old. And I asked the internet, I went on Instagram and said, does anybody know any mastering people that can help me with this? Not just transfer the vinyls, but clean them up and make them sound the best quality. And I get a recommendation. Someone in Los Angeles, where I actually live, gave me a recommendation to a man named Alan Dochis, who lives on the East Coast of the United States, close to New Jersey, but in the upstate New York region. And so I reach out to him and I tell him about the project. And he said, you've got to be kidding me. I worked with Paul Kaiser when I was very young, when he was around, like, the man's probably in his 50s or 60s. When he was 19, 20, he worked under Paul Kaiser for like some sessions as an engineer. So it was just like, the planets aligning in such a way. And he was so helpful, and just his spirit was behind the project. So it was such an amazing, and they hadn't spoken in 40 years or something. So I put them in contact, and Paul Kaiser was so thrilled because he remembered him, and it was amazing.
So the things were cleaned up. How do you do that with the licensing? And I think some artists want money or royalties. How is this being done? How can I imagine this?
It was pretty easy once I had the gift of ignorance. I had no idea how it worked, so I was just asking questions and talking to, once I got the phone numbers of Paul and George, just talking to them, asking them how it works, and through these conversations, I finally learned that with these particular songs, George and Paul had control over them. So I think stage one is to find out who is the end person when it comes to control is the key word, I think. And when I found out, because some of the songs I had selected other songs that Paul or George couldn't speak to who actually owns the copyright or the phonographic copyright. And so once I figured out that Paul owned the collection that Paul had and George owned the collection that George had, it just came down to working with one person and exchanging, paying for licensing fees just through one person. And I think moving forward, it might be more complicated than that. You sometimes have to work with a record label and then the artist. And just, when you're reissuing, trust is so important because they are very understandably cautious about what you intend to do with their music, if you're going to rip them off or whatever. So it was, I think being so naive was a blessing because I was just able to be a person and say, look, I want to work with you. I want a deal that you love and you feel great about, and a way for me to make money just to support this and for it to pay for itself. I don't think I'm going to make any money on this, and I just want to strike a deal. So it was really nice to be able to be able to learn from them and be able to work out a deal that was beneficial for both of us.
Oh, that's so fascinating. And I think it's with artists working, they've been I think from the interviews I did with the past with certain artists, they've been screwed up a lot in the past. So they are very, very careful about anything. And also if some artist died and you have the family estate, I think then it also can get very complicated in these cases.
Yeah, I really think transparency is your best friend when you're going into something like this. You just, if your heart is pure and you don't want to hurt them or take advantage of them, you just show them exactly what you stand to make on a project. Once they realize that, there isn't great fortunes to be made, and you put that language in some sort of contract, I think it disarms them a little bit, and they realize this is a work of passion. This is born out of the love of the music, and all the goal I would ever have is to make this music more widely available and be able to make enough money to cover the expenses to do it to begin with. Because from what I learned very, very early on is that no one in this reissue business is making millions of dollars. It's not about that.
No, absolutely not, because you have the cost for the printing, you have to do the design, you have to do a liner notes, you have to make sure that the guy who's doing the remastering has been paid, you have to pay the licensing, you have to pay the pressing plant, distribution, and just to begin with, sometimes the photos you're using on the cover needs to be licensed and everything. So this is more or less a labor of love.
Absolutely. And what I do professionally is I'm a graphic designer. So I get to do those things. I get to, live out my fantasy as someone who gets to, make album covers for my heroes. And I don't have, and I don't have to pay someone to do that. I get to do that. And it's a thrill for me.
Yeah, because what I thought was so cool with this record is that you can choose the cover. Which one you prefer? I like the idea. And when I got the record, I was like, where does it open? It's a top loader. And that's perfect. If you have it in a case or you're on a DJ gig or anything, you have the top loader and you have have better access to it.
Yeah, I wanted them, I didn't know I wanted them to share the album in its entirety. I didn't want there to be a distinctive front or back because they both deserve to be on the cover of this. So, and then I just love, I sort of stole the design of like what you would see on a cassette where the track listing is on the side. And I love that too, because you can pull it out and know exactly, you don't have to pull the actual record out. You can see where what track to go to just from the cover. And as a DJ, it's so helpful.
And I absolutely adore your selection. And for those who want to have a listen to the record, you can go on the website from Continued Sound. There you can listen to the tracks. You can also listen to it on Spotify to get a glimpse, but it's nothing is better than holding the actual record in your hands. And my absolute highlight on this record, and there are many highlights, is Storm, She Comes Up. I'm so in love with this track, and I looked the group up because I haven't heard of them before, and they only made, if I'm not mistaken, just one single.
I think so, yeah.
And I couldn't believe that they sounded so good and so great, and I thought they must have recorded more, and there's just this one single. I wish I would have known what happened to these guys. They were tremendously great.
I'm sure Paul knows something. I bet, I'm sure if I asked him, he didn't. He told me with a lot of, I think Pride is another one where they disbanded and found work in other ways, like, New Sound Express became Rise, and they just can find different avenues. So I'm sure Storm was just an amalgamation of great players, but you're right. It felt like such a tight group that it sounds like they've just been working together for so long, and it's just so established. It's wild that
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. They didn't sound like they just started singing together. And also, I think this is an all-time classic, Soul Walking.
Oh yeah,
this is an all-time classic. And what I loved so much is that you put actually 2 tracks from the Escorts on it. And I thought when I heard the record on Spotify, that was before I got the record, I was like, why didn't he take Look Over Your Shoulder? And then I saw, oh, it's the last song on the album. I was so happy because that's my absolute favorite track from this whole album from the Escorts.
Oh yeah.
And what I found very interesting is, I'm showing the people who will watch this, next to the record, you also get this absolutely stunningly beautiful booklet, which is also very well been printed. Once again, I love the artwork. You did a fantastic job. And on the back, we get some album covers and also some singles. And here, I think there's a Storm, where we have this from UK Records. And the Escorts, when they released that album, they had kind of little biography snippets in front of each track. You didn't use that. Why didn't you use that?
I found that I wanted to, firstly, I think I wanted to jump right into the music as being like the first, and the fact that when you listen to the album, it's sort of, there's a totality that those interviews sort of make up, and that's your experience with that album. But I worried that if it was, also it's recorded very differently. It's very scratchy and the engineer that worked on the album was like, these are impossible. So the music was much easier to clean up than those interviews, but I have big plans for the Escorts. And George, I want to release their entire catalog. They have the 2 albums, and I hope so. When I do that, I almost wanted to tease the Escorts. I wanted to have enough so you could hear how great they were, and then I hope to follow up with more Escort stuff, and maybe I'll have those interviews and maybe on a different track so you can quickly access, because as a DJ you just want to get straight to the music, but those interviews are so special and unique.
Absolutely, because they tell the story actually, and it was so fascinating. And maybe you can put together these spoken parts together into one track as a bonus track at the end, so you have the whole story, something like this. And that was stunningly beautiful. And I looked up because George Kerr, do I spell him correct? Kerr? I spell him correct. Yeah. He was also big at All Platinum.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a book which came out just also a couple of weeks ago by Steve Guranori. And
I never seen this.
Yes, this came out just, and it has like all the singles and everything. And I'm doing an interview with him in a couple of weeks. So,
oh wow, I need to.
If you have questions, just let me know. I'll forward him. And the first entry I found from Mr. Kerr was at page 340. Let me see, where you have Backlash, and there's the producer was George Kerr, was released in 1970, and you all get the singles and the pictures and everything to this.
Oh
This
my
is
gosh.
very, very exciting. So I looked him up and I said, wow, this is so great news to have this connection.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's got to be, I know he's in his 90s, but I'm not sure how old, how old, but he's, you know, he's the most, when you talk to him on the phone, he's just the most excited, upbeat sort of guy. He lives in New Jersey. When I had a release party for the record in New Jersey, and he was like, I'll be there. And he had a prior commitment, but he was excited, and he's a great guy to know. His story just goes back. He replaced Little Anthony and the Imperials. He's just got stories for days, just letting that guy go and tell you stories of his experience in the music business is just endlessly fascinating. And he's just got a library of music under his belt. And, you know, the samples from hip hop, he credits himself as being the most sampled musician in hip hop. I don't know if that's the case or not, but he's got some classics that he produced, and I think he has a comfortable living from the hip hop samples alone.
Yeah, but thankfully he's getting the money from this. Very often you have like being sampled and not getting anything. You know?
I know. I think a lot of, you know, it was the sampling phenomenon had to be sort of figured out on its own in order for people to get paid. And the people that, when hip hop started and through the 90s and even the 2000s, the sampling game was not looking after their originators. And a lot of times I think, you know, George has had to sue in order to get his royalties. But these days, I think things have started. I hopefully think things are starting to, with things like TuneCore, and you just enter in the people you sampled, and the avenues to get them paid are so much easier that, you know, it's hopefully everything just works itself out. I don't think there was ever any, you know, malice with a young producer in hip hop trying to use these tracks. I'm sure they would happily, if they could afford to, and work with the label to get them paid. But hopefully it's starting to become more streamlined and work itself out.
Yeah, I did ask De La Soul about this. They couldn't reissue their albums because of the heavy sampling they did.
Oh yeah,
for a long time. Yeah, and the tracks were great. I love them.
I know. There's crazy stories, like, you know, Lou Reed owns all of the Can I Kick It song from Tribe Called Quest. It's just, when you're young and naive, you're just like, this sounds great, and you don't realize, but it's great. We all still got to hear it. He didn't kill it. It's just they didn't get to make any money off of it.
Exactly. Do you have a favorite track from the album? Is there one which is very meaningful to you?
I really love Pride, and the longer version was Pride of the Ghetto, but they shortened the band name to Pride for the 45s. But I love the Latin influence that it has, and I think they also only have 4 songs total in their entire library. But I just love I feel like what I've been listening to so much is with Latin sort of soul and Brazilian stuff, and it just feels so fresh. I feel like it's just got a quality to it that, and the fact that it came out of New Jersey, and it's another facet of the sort of New Jersey diaspora of there's Latin people, there's Black people, there's white. It's just so much. It's such a melting pot, and I just love that it sort of reflects that. So that's a favorite of mine, and it's dancey as hell.
Absolutely. But wouldn't it be great if you could have access to the original master tapes, or if Paul or George having some outtakes or tracks they never released? Wouldn't that be great?
That would be great. I wonder if they have any lying around. I mean, I think over the years things just really, you don't know to preserve them, and then I don't know. I'm sure, does All Platinum book talk about the fire that happened and destroyed a lot of the Sugar Hill Library in New Jersey, and so things like that can happen. And yeah, it'd be great. I would love to work with master tapes at some point. That would be incredible. But it's also so great to have clean, like, as a DJ and a vinyl lover, if the only access you have to a certain record is like the scratchy poppy, that stuff's great, but to hear it cleaned up for the first time is also a great gift that I feel honored to have been able to do.
You know what would have been great for the website, to have a before and after?
Oh, That's true.
That would be great to see how much you could improve the sound of it, because when I've heard it, I knew instantly, okay, this must be a needle drop.
Mm-hmm.
But I also I'm not the biggest Spotify fan because I'm lazy.
Mm-hmm.
When I put on a record, like, oh no, 2 minutes 30 seconds, oh, I need to turn around. So for me, this compilation is perfect.
Yeah.
So I know how they can sound, and I think it would be great to have them before and after to see the results. That would be great.
That's interesting. Yeah, I have them. I could definitely show those to folks to see just, yeah, how great a job that Alan Doches did too, with taking out the pops and the hisses and things like that.
So is this, I think when I understood it correctly, this is limited to 500, right?
It's 1,000.
It's 1,000. So it's limited to 1,000. So if people want to have it, they can still get it, or are you at the point where you say you should order soon?
I would encourage to order soon to make sure you have it. I have distribution, but those, that goes out to record stores all over, but I'm not sure where exactly. I know it's worldwide, but if you don't see it in your local record shop, you can just go to continuedsound.com and pick one up. Every store. I went to New Jersey last month and visited record shops, and I'd probably give 5 to each record stop. And I was in New Jersey for a week, and by the end of the week, most of the record stores have sold out of the record, so I had to bring them more. So I'm so thrilled that it's so popular. And yeah, if anyone wants to pick one up, they should act now.
Buy now or cry later.
Yeah.
So will there be a volume 2? Because it clearly says volume 1.
I definitely wanted to do, to say volume 1 and promise volume 2, volume 3. I wanted to establish the Soul of New Jersey as a series, because there's so much. There's new artists to work with. There's new decades to work with. Paul especially has done some great stuff in the 80s and early 80s, which is a great time. And there's just so many people to work with that I really want to have this be a volume of work that we can, attribute to New Jersey, because I want to keep more and more establish the soul of New Jersey as an entity in the global consciousness.
Yeah, because there is the soul of Chicago, there is a Memphis soul, there is New York soul. Mm-hmm. So every kind of state has its own soul, especially with Memphis, you have Stax, you had Vault as a sub-label, and there are so many great labels. In Chicago, there was Chess, I think. The Chess label was pretty big, and I love the Chess label. Do you know the record from Joe and Garrett?
I don't think so.
It's a beautiful record. You should check that. I'll send you a link. You should. This is a mind-blowing record. She only did one album and then a couple of singles, and then she disappeared.
Oh, wow.
And was nowhere to be found. And people, there's a label, I think the Numero Group.
Yeah.
This is a label and they tracked down a track which wasn't released, and they put it on a compilation, and they were trying to find her because there was money she earned, but they couldn't find it. You should check out Joe and Garrett. This is tremendously great. So, and every state has its own style, and therefore I think it's so great that you put out these compilations that people really get into it, and especially lazy people like me who don't have to change that all the time. And I was surprised. I checked out the Storm single, and it's not super expensive.
Yeah, I think it's so some releases are so rare they don't even have, the price hasn't even been jacked up. So if they're probably, I should ask, I wonder if any data is on the disc to just show how many were released to begin with, because it's undoubtedly a rare release, but it's so much so.
It's under the radar. Damn it, I should have bought them before we did the interview.
Yeah.
That's so great. I love it when you experience new songs and all get to this. And what are your favorite tracks at the moment to play on a DJ set?
Oh, let's see. I mean, I'll just go grab it. Before we started recording,
I love this one.
I'll happily plug.
I love this one.
The Lim Taylor record that was reissued by Inner Groove Records, which is another New Jersey based. It's a record store, and also I think they're just like me. They've just gotten into the reissue game, and I don't know how they came into contact with the previous record label, but this one is 500. And it's numbered. I have number 22 of 500, and it's just incredible. He's got a voice like King Curtis or something, and it's very, very smooth, but it's got very like sort of hip hop break beats and just funky stuff. And yeah, it's, as a DJ, there's no better treat than having something that people haven't heard and people don't have. So like the rarity factor and how good it is really exciting.
And for those who will be watching and think, oh, I want to have an original. Well, the original is, if you find it, up to $500.
Yeah.
If you find it.
Yeah, if you find it, and who knows what condition it would be in. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the beauty of the reissues.
So back in the days, I wasn't a big fan of needle drops, but there was from Coal Mine Record a reissue of the album from Barbara Harwood, On the Rise. I don't know if you know this. And I've heard the reissue and I was stunned about the quality. I consider myself very lucky. I have an original and I have the reissue, and I was listening to the reissue and the original, and I thought, wow, the reissue, the needle drop sounds better than the original one. So for everybody who's saying, oh, I have problems with needle drops, sometimes you don't have any other chance to get the music because the master tapes are lost or they're burned or whatever kind of reason. So you should absolutely give needle drops a chance if there's no other possibility.
Yeah, I think I always return to, the love of the music, and there are always something you might prefer or something that might have a little more authenticity. But if I feel like what we all can agree on is if a song, the way the song makes us feel or the way the music makes us feel, however we're receiving it, just is sort of hard to top. And if you can, and sharing music being a passion for so many people, it's nothing sort of trumps that. And we can want better quality sometimes. I'll always pick up records or reissues that I was like, this is not great, but I had never heard this before. And if this is all I get for the first time hearing this, it's worth it. And yeah, it's, master tapes are the grail, the golden, standard for what you're trying to produce. But if your passion is sharing the music, you'll do it in any way you can.
Absolutely. And I'm so thankful for compilation albums like yours, because I learned about groups which like with Storm just made one track. I would have never heard of them if it wasn't for your compilation.
Oh, I'm so honored. You're
really, there were some tracks.
It's got to be tough.
And by the time I get to Phoenix, I thought, okay, let's give it a try. But they also did a very nice version of this. It's hard to beat Isaac Hayes on this one, but I also love Nancy Williams' version on this. Marvin Gaye did a little version, but this is really the Escorts were tremendously good group. Can you tell us a little background on the group?
Yeah, so the first thing that blows everyone away is that they were all incarcerated they were all prisoners in Rahway State Penitentiary, which is a prison in New Jersey. There they are behind bars in this ridiculous photo. But George Kerr found them at a prison talent show and decided to pursue them and do whatever he had to do to come into contact with them. It's not like anyone can't just walk into a prison and decide to cut an album with a bunch of prisoners. He said it took months and years, and due to that determination, he must have seen something in them that he knew was special, and he recorded 2 albums with them, and then a few of them would get released and he would work with them. And the gift of it is it sort of set them up for music success when they got out. And you can even find Escort stuff, I think, in the 80s so the fact that it gave music careers to some of these former inmates is a gift, but it's such a unique, it's deserving of a documentary, really, because it's I don't know if it had ever been done before at that point.
No, I don't think
Or
so. And
since.
for me, the having these snippets of this interview, where I think it was done on a cassette recorder on some low quality thing, to have the backstory before each track, that was such a great idea, that you as a listener get the whole picture out of it. And I was like, what happened with this group? So what happened afterwards? But it's great to hear that they had a chance to become successful musicians.
Yeah, he put them in a position to make a name for themselves. And I don't know what happened to all of them, but it was, I think a few of them are still alive, and we have these, and it's going back to the music again. It's such an honor to be able to like show someone the Escorts if they haven't heard of them, or just show someone and give it to a wider audience. Again, like Escorts albums on Discogs or something aren't super expensive, but again, it's just, that's how under the radar. And I think with a story like that and a listening experience like that, having that in any record store, knowing if you can read about it and just holding it, I would buy that like immediately. It's just,
Absolutely.
it's how to tell these stories and retell these stories and share them with new generations.
And what really knocked me off my feet, I have seen this cover before, but I thought this was so stunning, was the Soul Generation, the cover when they were on the building. That's like a piece of art.
I know, it's so cool.
That's so great. And also this one isn't a super expensive record, and it sounds so great. It was amazing what these guys did back in the day. So there was no auto-tune or anything. You really had to sing and be in harmony and all of this. And I think this isn't really, in some cases, not really appreciated, how much talent you needed to have to sound good. And there was no like, okay, we tweak a little around on this with the computer. Then they had to redo the take till it was perfect, till everybody was right on spot.
I know, especially the less money you had to make your record, the more perfect you had to be. You couldn't afford another day of studio time or more tape to record on. You had to be clean and sort of perfect on those days. It's a level of perfectionism that I can only imagine is lost to this generation, because it doesn't call for it anymore, which is fortunate and helps a producer, but it just speaks to, when you know the backstory and just how much it takes to get a clean take with the whole group and have your voice sound perfect and all that stuff, makes you appreciate it that much more, the music.
I love the fact that you put Tammy Terrell with them on the picture.
Oh, it's Florence Ballard.
Florence Ballard, yeah. Sorry.
Oh, I know.
That's such a great picture. Do you have, what I would also suggest is that you put the pictures how they were. I think they were black and white pictures.
Yeah.
On the website. So I love Florence. I love Florence. So this is just, I can't recommend this enough. And also, if you're in a record store and you don't have Spotify or anything, you just scan up the QR code and you get right on the website where you can also listen to these tracks. So you did so well with this, Graham.
Oh, thank you so much.
And also what I want to point out, because I'm very critical, and I was so satisfied that this is a 180 gram vinyl. So why did you decide to do it on a 180 gram instead of 120 gram?
I believe it was solely because it's coming from a DJ standpoint, and I play records sort of, I travel around with my records and I play them out in bars and restaurants and stuff. And I got the chance as a DJ to make my perfect experience with a record, and, having so much experience handling different types of records, how they've let me down and nothing really beats the 180 gram. It's sturdy and it's just, less likely to crack or warp, and these are just issues and another way to give it sustainability over time is that it just hopefully won't, be as subject to sort of damage. The same reason, and also the top loader, I'd love just pulling it out of a carrying case and being able to take it and put it on. Everything, it was a dream to be able to create my ideal record that I wanted to work with and spin.
Do you know why I got confused with Florence and Tammy? Because I have Tammy in the background.
Oh, yeah, Tammy on the brain.
Tammy on the brain. So sad that she died in 1970. She was so good.
She was so special.
Do you have a holy grail record or single in your collection? Not because, maybe because it's super rare or because it means a lot to you? Is there one particular?
Oh, I'm sure I do. Let me see. Let let's see what I can pull out. Hold on.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I've got a few.
Okay. This.
Did you find yours?
Yeah, this is the Joanne Garrett.
Wow.
Just a taste. If you on chess, if you have the chance to check her out, I promise you won't be disappointed. And this is the Barbara Haywood.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the original one. I looked for it for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And so, but please go ahead, show me your grails.
Okay. Are you a fan of library music, Nadine?
Absolutely.
So this one is one of my favorites. It's called Clouds, and it's a later KPM release, and it's by Graham DeWild. So I already loved it because we have the same name, but it's just got, with a cover like that, you're like, what is on this? And I mean, and I love that later, KPM albums are normally just that solid green color and you don't know what's on it. But later on let's see when this got released, I think the early 80s, they got cool covers like this. And yeah, it's a library record about clouds with tracks like Cumulus and Cirrus, and it's funky, and like I would not know how to give a soundtrack to Clouds, but I probably wouldn't have gone with like dance floor quality funk and synth and stuff, but I'm so happy they did. And so that one's a real favorite of mine. Another one pertaining to New Jersey is this P-Vine Japanese release. That's Sylvia and George, King and Queen of Sweet New Jersey. And we don't have stuff like this in New Jersey or in the United States for that matter. So the fact that Japan was putting out these New Jersey tribute albums celebrating George and celebrating Sylvia, which is, two icons of New Jersey soul. It's so cool, and it has just some classics from both of them, but even a song Just As Long with Tracy Kerr, George's daughter.
Okay.
So yeah, those are some special ones.
Yeah, P-Vine did some great reissues. They did some great reissues.
I know, they're fantastic, and it's so interesting to explain to people who might not know the sort of this world that we live in, that there's interest in soul music, sort of greater interest in soul music in other parts of the world than even the United States. That Japan would put out a New Jersey release is like, most people do not comprehend that there's such an appreciation for these people's music outside of where they live, outside of their communities, even outside of their country.
Yeah, absolutely. And library records are getting the hot shit now, because some of them are really skyrocketing in price.
Oh yeah.
And I've heard some, and they were so great, but these were a couple of $100.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh. They were great. They're absolutely great.
I know, and I don't mind. That's where the reissue fan in me comes out, because if I can hear it and it will cost me $30 as opposed to $130, and I think Be With, the album, the label Be With Records has a exclusive deal with KPM, so they're just putting out all the greatest KPM stuff. It's just, you feel lucky to listen to it in the first place. And it's such fantastic stuff that, again, under the radar. I mean, it's on the radar with the right crowds, but you know, if I walked out of my front door and asked my neighbor if he heard a library music, he's like, what are you talking about? So it's still pretty.
Somebody reading a book? What do you mean with library music?
Yeah, what are those two words together? What are you talking about?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Graham, you know what I would love to do with you? A live stream where you present like 10 or 20 records and you make some recommendations. That would be so awesome.
I'd love that. What an honor.
Perfect. We will do this because I love the selection of music. All
right. Yeah, I got some more. I just love any excuse to get into my stack of records and play around.
Yeah, I'm so thankful that you did it. Like you said, I'm so falling in love with some of these tracks, and I will look up if I can find the singles. Like I said, some of them aren't really expensive, and it's so great to have the thing. You know, I have my problems with Discogs because VG Plus for some people is a different VG Plus than mine kind of standard. But yeah, that's so great to have found this. Graham, thank you so much for your time. Like I said in the beginning, Continued Sound. I put the link for the record down in the description. You can hear all the tracks, and hopefully Graham will do a before and after so you can hear the difference, because I'm pretty sure the difference will be huge.
Yeah.
And it's limited to 1,000, and I've heard it and I loved it, and I promise you, you won't be disappointed with it. And Graham, I can't wait for Volume 2.
All right. I can't wait to bring it to you. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for your time.